Coming up on One Detroit, food banks across the state at their limits. What has to change to meet the growing demand of food insecurity? Plus, Nolan Finley on delivery robots in Ann Arbor taking on more work. Then, concerns over getting counted in the census with Wayne County Executive Warren Evans. Also ahead, there's still a state agenda even without a Mackinac Policy Conference. And hydroponics, now exclusively for your salad. I'm Christy McDonald. It's all ahead on One Detroit.
Support for this program provided by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, MASCO Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. MASCO, serving Michigan communities since 1929. The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. NISSAN Foundation, and viewers like you.
Hey, One Detroit, welcome to the show. I'm Christy McDonald. Pretty steamy week here in Michigan. We're all venturing out a little bit more, social distancing. The malls are opening back up. I have ventured up from my basement where I've been broadcasting for the last 10 weeks, but we are still under an emergency order. The unemployment rate is high across the state, and we are adjusting to risk. So coming up this week on One Detroit, in an increasingly contactless world, see the delivery robots getting a lot of work now in Ann Arbor. Nolan Finley will have that story for us. Plus, Stephen Henderson meets up with Wayne County Exec Warren Evans on the challenges of making sure people get counted in the census. Also ahead, we should have been on the island this week, but what's the future of the Mackinac Policy Conference and the crucial issues that are now before us as a state? And then the pandemic forces a small hydroponics company to switch up their business plan. See what they're selling now. But we are starting off with the strain the 3,000 food pantries around the state are seeing since the pandemic started. The concern is keeping up with the staggering volume and helping the growing number of food insecure families around the state. I talked with Dr. Phillip Knight. He's the executive director of the Food Bank Council of Michigan. Give us a sense what food insecurity was in the state of Michigan pre-COVID and now what we're dealing with.
Yeah, so right before the schools closed, we were probably looking at about 1.4 million people across the state that were food insecure. That is, they were living under the toxic stress of where's my next meal going to come from? What am I going to give my kids? And probably of that 1.4 million, then we're probably talking about 400,000 of those being children.
So now in a COVID-19 world where we have people who have lost their jobs, what are food banks facing around the state?
Yeah, great question, because that's really like the third wave of people that have come to us seeking food, people who've never had to negotiate the emergency food network before. So contract workers, folks that are in the service industry, maybe employees of small businesses, they're coming to us because they make too much money prior to COVID to qualify for any federal program. So they're coming to the food bank network.
So you're really dealing with multiple layers of people who are now in need. And would you say that this is the largest need that the state of Michigan and the food bank system has seen?
By far, by far. The first wave was the students and their families, particularly the students who are on free and reduced breakfast and lunch at school. That was the first wave. The second wave was senior citizens, the most vulnerable population. So we created a program that actually would put food on their porch so they didn't have to come out. So we had the innocent with the student, the most vulnerable with the seniors, and now this third wave with people who've never had to come to us before.
So what are the logistics in terms of making sure that there is enough? What are some of the food banks around? And I know it will vary from parts of the state, telling
Right.
you in terms of running out of goods and keeping that supply chain going of donation.
So it's, again, it's a great question because prior to COVID, we were probably distributing at the 7 Feeding America food banks that serve all of Michigan's 83 counties, 2.8 million pounds of food across the state as a network. Since COVID, we're well over 4 million pounds of food across the state.
Do you think that number is going to go up, Phil?
I think it'll maintain this level for some time. COVID's going to have a long tail. Just because the economy starts to re-engage doesn't mean we're all suddenly whole financially. So it's going to take some time. And we're projecting this alongside the food insecurity rate, alongside of the unemployment rate. So we're preparing to last till 2022.
Is the system built and the food pantry delivery system built to sustain that kind of level and stress over the long haul?
I don't think so. I don't think emotionally, physically, mentally, if we continue to work at with the same infrastructure before as we are current, we can ramp up for the crisis. We've done that. But I think that our leadership will have to take a step back and allow COVID to do things for us instead of just against us. And what I mean by that is we can look at this and take this as an opportunity to reinvent ourselves, become more effective, become more efficient. Gleaners Community Food Bank and Forgotten Harvest, both serving Southeast Michigan, definitely have seen the greatest uptick, following right along the path of the COVID outbreak. Doesn't mean that rural hunger is not important, and it doesn't mean that it's not still present with us, but just the sheer numbers of people that have been exposed in Southeast Michigan has led to a tremendous need for people to have food.
And Phil, can you describe for me, I think the accompanied trauma that people don't realize that goes along with families and food insecurity?
Yeah, so Christy, if most of us are blessed enough that we've never had to ask ourselves the question, what am I going to eat and what am I going to give my children? To live under that toxic stress, under blue skies, outside of a pandemic, is a debilitating stress because there's always trade-offs. I got more month than I do money, so am I not going to pay my rent so I can buy food or my prescriptions or utility? What am I going to do? Put that inside a pandemic where you're constantly threatened about your own health and the health of your children. It's debilitating.
We're in a time where technology is really driving a lot of the changes in a COVID-19 world. And delivery robots developed from a startup company at the U of M are doing a lot of that work. Nolan Finley talked to the co-founders of Refraction AI in Ann Arbor.
We have Matthew Johnson-Roberson and Ram Vasudevan, engineering professors at the University of Michigan, who have started a new company, Refraction AI, to put robots on the streets, starting in Ann Arbor, to sort of take the human contact out of food delivery services. You guys developed this robotic delivery system, and the university's technology spin-off program assisted you in getting this business up and running, and you already have these robots out and going in Ann Arbor. How's it working?
Quite well. So we're offering both restaurant and grocery delivery. We had been working on delivery robots, and then a global pandemic hit, and the need and necessity and sort of importance of them, and particularly for contactless delivery, just really skyrocketed. And so we've seen this massive increase in demand on both the consumer and restaurant side and the grocery store side. But also we're trying to do our little part to really help to decrease the spread of the virus in the way that people get what they really need, which is food to their homes and families.
So now I saw a demonstration of this technology or similar technology when I was in Japan last year. And what I saw looked like an ice cream truck that the food went in, or products went into the square container. It had wheels on it, and it went rolling down the sidewalk and stopped at various storefronts or apartments. How does your system work? Is it similar to that?
A little different. So we think there's a lot of great sidewalk robots, but I think one of the big challenges is that they end up competing for space with human beings. What we do is we travel on the street. We travel primarily in the margin of the road. So that's next to parked cars, that's in bike lanes, and really is sort of like in size and speed, a human on a bicycle. So you can think of it as a bicycle messenger without a person on it.
So Ram, how does this work? What's the technology?
It behaves autonomously most of the time. So that is, it's driving around in Ann Arbor on the margin of the road, staying out of the way of traffic and, both pedestrian and vehicle. We want to be able to complete a delivery within 30 minutes. So we pick up the food or we pick up the grocery item. We want to get it to the customer as rapidly as possible. We let them know when they come outside, they receive a text message so that they know that, the object is out there. They can press a button and the robot opens and they can pick up their food directly. They don't need to touch the robot in any way, shape, or form.
So I assume it uses GPS technology. How does it navigate traffic? How does it know when to stop at stop signs? Know how to avoid pedestrians?
So we use three different kind of sensing. So we use sound, we use light, and then we use radar waves. So the sound is ultrasound. And so what that's like are the backup sensors in your car that tell you how close you are to the car behind you. We use cameras to recognize traffic lights. And then again, we use radar waves, which can see a fair bit further and can actually see through things. And so that lets us see cars, people, bikes, wheelchairs, really everything out there on the road. And so we build a map of what's happening around us, and we use that map to figure out where to go.
Have you experienced any glitches in the technology? Are your customers satisfied?
As a whole, our customers have been really excited about it. On the technology side, we rely on autonomy for a lot of our ride, but we do have people watching from our home base in downtown Ann Arbor, watching the robot as it's moving around. So there are drivers sitting in their home, making sure that it's behaving reasonably. If it runs into a situation that, sometimes, an intersection that's fairly complicated, we actually roll back and rely on that human driver to actually step in and get the robot through those complex intersections.
So beyond the COVID crisis, what's the application for these robots?
Our long-term vision is really around trying to change the way we do this last mile delivery problem. So right now, if you want to get food delivered to you, you don't have a ton of options. There are pizza spots and grocery stores that hire their own drivers. And then there are big third-party services like DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, Instacart, et cetera. One of the big challenges is that those big players are actually reasonably expensive for restaurants and for grocery stores. And so it makes it very hard for them to make a living because they take so much money in delivery costs. And then if you talk to pizza restaurants, it's really hard to maintain a fleet of drivers yourself. The economics don't really work out if you're a smaller restaurant. And so we're trying to figure out a way to facilitate doing not just food delivery, but also groceries, hopefully in many places around the US and ultimately the world, to make it easier, cheaper, and hopefully more reliable. And at the end of the day, safer, we think, to be able to get food brought to you and from anywhere that you want.
There's a big push for people to turn in their census forms right now, and the pandemic has made it a bigger challenge for people to be counted. So Stephen Henderson on American Black Journal talked with Wayne County Executive Warren Evans about new ways to get the word out.
This is still a census year, and I am always nervous in a census year about getting folks to fill it out so that we can count everybody and get the money that we deserve because of that.
The number is extremely low. We've been working on the census for almost a year, so you couldn't anticipate this happening. But the bright side of this is people are home and confined, and if they would focus for 10 minutes, you could fill out the form, online, a number of ways. People need to really understand that the revenue that these communities will get over the next 10 years is in large part dictated by being counted in the census. And so besides the fears that I think some people have about how the information would be used, hopefully that's been dispelled, that is not really an issue. The issue is, think about what services you'd like to see enhanced, and what are the shortfalls in services that you've seen through this pandemic that ought to help everybody think about, we need every penny we can get during this next 10-year period. So young people, 1 to 5, are quite often missed in the count. And I don't think, what's a 1-year-old or 5-year-old? I mean, think about it. This is for 10 years. That kid will be 15 at the end. And, school lunch programs and a number of other things will be affected all of the time that young person is growing up. So people need to really focus on being counted. It's our tax dollars that come back, our tax dollars that we need to be more than a donor state. We need to get our fair share of revenue back.
In Wayne County, the largest county here in the state of Michigan, and the home of Detroit, the largest city, that has had a disproportionate effect and consequence as a result of COVID.
It's been devastating to the county, as I think most people know. The city has its own health department, so we provide the health services for the other 42 communities in Wayne County. And the numbers have been staggering, and the death count has been significant. And even in a number of out-county communities, many of them kind of loaded with nursing homes. And that has, been one of the hotspot areas. But by and large, I'm happy with people's response when we started to get our arms around testing and working very, very hard at getting people to appreciate social distancing and those sorts of things. And at least until Memorial Day, we were doing a pretty good job. I'm not so sure what it's going to be in 10 days from now, but certainly the numbers in Wayne County have been trending down.
I really wonder what your lens tells you about things we just either missed opportunities to do or just did wrong.
Yeah, I think it starts with something that I don't know anybody would have been prepared for, and that's enough PPEs available so you can keep your first responders feeling safe, healthy, not worried about contagion to their families and that sort of thing. And we were unprepared, but everyone in the country was.
Let's also talk about the budget impact of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, big revenue losses. Obviously, property tax collection when people are unemployed and those sorts of things are an issue. I made the decision kind of based on Wayne County's past history when I took office and that employees had given significantly. And in anticipation of a budget shortfall, I was not about to lay people off at the time. That might have been fiscally prudent, but it absolutely wasn't people prudent.
Well, this week, the entire One Detroit team would have been up on Mackinac Island for the 2020 Mackinac Policy Conference. This would be the 10th year that Detroit Public Television brought the entire conference to broadcast and online so everyone could see and be a part of the big discussions that happen every year up north. Well, since COVID-19 changed all of that, the Detroit Regional Chamber put together a week's worth of virtual conversations looking at some of the biggest challenges ahead for Detroit and the state. I met up with Detroit Regional Chamber CEO Sandy Brua this week to talk about the serious situation our region finds itself in now and if there will be a policy conference in the future.
Sandy, usually we'd be face-to-face on the porch at Mackinac at this point.
Yeah, I tell you, it is so odd for me to go through Memorial Day weekend without having to think how many shoes I'm packing, which blazers I'm taking, and what my cocktail lineup is going to be for the next week.
A lot of people are talking about Mackinac and missing the face-to-face contact. Obviously, we can all now communicate by Zoom or whatever chat feature that you'd like, but missing the real face-to-face is something that I think we're all missing right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's really three parts to the Mackinac Policy Conference. One is the content that we bring, that with our partnership with DPTV, the national speakers that we bring, the statewide speakers that we bring, kind of the content that we're bringing. The second piece is obviously what kind of policy progress are we making in the state and how do we use the conference as a way to get get things done in the state of Michigan. But the third piece is the piece that you're referring to is that face-to-face connection. And it really is, how do you get a business leader who might be based in Grand Rapids talking to a city council person based in Detroit, with a Supreme Court justice based in Lansing? Nowhere else do those types of conversations take place other than the Mackinac Policy Conference.
Yeah, talk to me, Sandy, about it feels like Michigan and Detroit specifically had really gotten its footing. We were having good conversations, there was good economic flow, and then this has knocked us back since March. What are I guess maybe the top 3 issues that you're talking about now with business leaders from around the state about what we have to do and how we're going to come together to tackle some of them?
So number 1 is our automotive industry. Our automotive industry just finished the 5 best years in the history of the country for automotive, and now we don't know what the future of automotive is going to be. We don't know what our sales per year are going to be because we don't know if this is going to drive customers away from the automobile showrooms, or if we're going to bring in a whole new kind of customer because they don't want to take public transportation anymore. So automotive is number 1. The second one is education. We have been working on part of the Launch Michigan initiative, really looking at how do we improve academic performance in our state and kind of the associated talent shortage that we have in this state. How do we solve that? And then this is all wrapped up, Christy, in this budget issue. How do we come together filling a $6 billion hole with a political environment that is more polarized than it ever has been?
You've got those top issues. Meanwhile, while you have people who are heading up companies and working with philanthropy, they're trying to figure out how to navigate the day-to-day of what business looks like now. One of the things at the chamber that you do is you poll your members.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're hearing from members, and we just finished a C-suite executive survey just for Southeast Michigan that said that businesses are prepared, willing, and able to change their business practices as needed to bring back both employees and customers and make them feel safe. That is a huge point of agreement. The second thing is that 100%, and I was really surprised by this, Christy, of the businesses that we surveyed just in the Southeast Michigan region were confident that they would be able to survive this crisis. Now, they may not be able to survive the crisis at the same level with the same employee count, but they're able to do that.
And finally, a lot of businesses have had to change and adjust since COVID-19. So we caught up with Planted over on the city's east side. It's a hydroponic farm that usually had been growing greens for restaurants. Well, now they've had to change it up a bit, and they're growing salads directly to consumers. Bill Kubota has the story.
We decided that we wanted to take the risk to stay open. Since we made that decision, we've sold almost every leaf of lettuce that we've grown. Quickly, the Detroit market showed us that they really did want to continue to buy local produce, which is wonderful.
Planted Detroit, a hydroponic farm on the city's Island View neighborhood. Last year, One Detroit showed you their operation growing greens and microgreens for local restaurants. With the pandemic, Planted's customer base vanished, meaning a big change if it were to survive.
We wanted to sell directly to folks that wanted to support their local farm. So we took the opportunity to pivot. If we go right to the customer, then they get exactly what they want because we have their feedback directly. We're able to offer them slightly lower prices. Just seems to be a real win-win. And since we're able to handle the logistics and deliver right to them, then that's really the best solution for us.
Hygienic procedures in place, Planted has jumped into the ready-to-eat salad business. It had already been selling some of their greens directly to customers, but now it's licensed to deliver the whole mix with all the fixins. So are you growing all the components that go into these salads?
Not all. We're still growing microgreens, greens, and herbs, and we do put some of each of those categories into every ready-to-eat salad. But then we're also going to be buying from some of our friends at Eastern Market down the road. We're just about a mile from there for additional fruits and vegetables and nuts that will go on top of the salad.
Planted makes door-to-door salad deliveries across Detroit and to a few cities nearby. Residents in the Island View zip code get a discount.
As always, margins are a little slim for us because we're growing in this high technology environment. but we're still building. We're constructing our next 2 grow rooms. We just started this week when the new executive order allowed for construction. So when we have that supply available, then we'll have even more volume and hopefully even more affordable prices.
Is there a lot of competition in what you're doing?
In a sense, there's more competition than there ever has been because direct to consumer is by nature more competitive than wholesaling. And a lot of small farms just like us have pivoted in the same way. We feel that we have sort of defended a bit of a niche in the market because we are an urban farm and we do produce a little bit more than the average Detroit urban farm. We really hope that this positive side of the pandemic is that people understand the value of local foods, because now all of a sudden we're intimately aware of how interconnected our world is. And when any aspect of it shuts down, then it really does compromise our ability to feed our families.
And that is going to do it for One Detroit. Thanks so much for joining me. Just a quick reminder, this weekend is the Everybody vs. COVID Unity Festival that's being put on by the city of Detroit. It's a virtual event, so it's Friday night and Saturday night starting at 7 p.m. Detroit musical acts, the whole 9 yards. For a link and more information, just go to our website at onedetroitpbs.org and enjoy. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next time. Take care.
You can find more at onedetroitpbs.org or subscribe to our social media channels and sign up for our One Detroit newsletter.
Support for this program provided by W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
From Delta Faucets to Behr Paint, MASCO Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. MASCO, serving Michigan communities since 1929. The DTE Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public TV, among the state's largest foundations committed to Michigan-focused giving. We support organizations that are doing exceptional work in our state. Visit dtefoundation.com to learn more.
Business Leaders for Michigan, dedicated to making Michigan a top 10 state for jobs, personal income, and a healthy economy. NISSAN Foundation, and viewers like you.